during the flood back in January. We were shouting for help from people. That's where I started to see animal lovers come in and help us to rebuild the shelter itself so that the animals are able to get back to their life. And in about a week, the shelter is able to get back to normal, regardless of their race, their status, their wealth. They come in and help. I'm very grateful that people actually comes in. People start donating lots of things. It actually put a lot of tears into my eyes that time. I feel that that's the happiest moment that I've seen in the shelter.
When we took over, the couple that were in charge, it was a husband and wife. The wife was a volunteer. The husband was our shelter manager. They actually were pretty good at trying to keep certain systems in place. You know, he recorded down all the animals that came in and what were the problems with them and all that. And at that time, we only had 4 staff and maybe 500 ringgit in the bank. And their condition was not very good. The guys in charge of the shelter at that time were doing the best that they could, but there was a lot of unhealthy animals, a lot of animals with skin disease. Not all of them had been vaccinated. I still remember when, I think about a month after we came into the committee, my mother-in-law had a fundraising event, and then she says, "Oh, I'm going to be given 2,000 ringgit." And so I was like, "Could you please give some money to SSPCA?" And we were just so happy to receive that first check. We were like, yeah, we can survive for another week, you know. We have the shelter because there are a lot of animals that are being abandoned. There's a lot of young animals. Unfortunately, some of them are thrown over our fence at night, and then they get attacked by the older animals. So there are definitely cases that we have to help.
What we are faced right now is that every time people abandon puppies at our ground, that actually saddens me a lot. When people start throwing in the dogs over to our fence, it's kind of like they're throwing their siblings away. And when you see this dog coming in, I find it like, it's kind of sad that actually they belong to no one right now. No one loves him. A lot of cases when they actually abandon these animals at our shelter, I find it like, it's very sad. And that's the most challenging part, especially the older dogs. It's no one would adopt them in good shape. For me, if you were taking a pet, a dog, you should be taking care the whole life, because they are not like your toys. You can just throw it away and give it to someone else. They are like people. They are life.
We don't actively go out and pick up strays from the streets because that is actually not the essence of our work. Actually, we're supposed to be concentrating on preventing cruelty. We do inspections, we do cruelty inspections. A lot of the time we just find that it's a lot of ignorance. People don't think about how the animal might be feeling. They keep him in a cage, next to the gate. If he's lucky, it has a roof. If not, most of the time he's just chained right next to the gate. No shelter from the sun and rain. So that's one of the challenges, to get people to understand that, you know, this is a living being. There are certain instances where if the owner agrees, then we will take the animal from them. If they really can't look after the animal, like we had one dog that was very fierce, hated the male owner because he had hit him when he was a puppy, and then the female owner just felt that she couldn't look after him anymore. So we actually had to get the council to come in and sedate the dog, and then we brought him to the shelter. So there are certain instances like this where we will take the animal away and bring him into our shelter. That's why we feel, education is such a big part. We are a shelter for the animals that need it, but we are not a dumping ground. We are not somewhere where, like we said earlier, where you can bring your old, useless pet. There was a guy who said, my 2 dogs at home are old and useless. So he says, can I send them to you? And I was like, no. And he says, why not? He says, I don't want them anymore. I said, you're sending the message to your children that when you are old and probably a little useless, they should just pack you off to the old folks' home because, they don't want to look after you anymore. So he thought about it. And I said, they should stay with you until the end of their life. And then, he didn't send his 2 old dogs to us. So it's education of the public that when you get an animal, it's not just to be your guard dog. A lot of them will adopt a kitten or a puppy because they're so cute, but then when they get a bit older, then they're like, oh, I want something else cute again. So that's why we always explain to them that, an animal can live an average of 10 years. It's a long-term thing. A pet is not just for Christmas or for a birthday. We had to also establish relationships with all the media just to get better awareness about the work that we do. And in that way, then we could get better funding because 90% of our money comes from public donations. If we had opened our doors to every single, we would probably have thousands of animals. So that's why, because number one, we can't afford it. Already our expenses with 300 to 400 animals is $30,000 a month. We're not actually providing enough space that each dog needs or each cat needs. Our cats in the shelter right now are actually kept in larger cages, but that's still not enough space for a cat. I mean, as you can see from Rocky here, he likes to roam around and that's the cat's nature. So just because we have a bigger space doesn't mean we can take more animals. We should be able to provide better circumstances for them.
Macam mana rasanya bekerja dengan haiwan?
Seronok lah, sebab saya sangat sayang haiwan, satu. And then saya juga mempunyai kelulusan dalam bidang haiwan. Saya ambil subjek zoologi semasa belajar di Unimas. Kerja dengan anjing dan kucing memang saya seronok lah sebab mereka lagi senang dipegang, senang di handle, senang di dekat lah. Cabaran yang ada kami hadap di shelter selalunya susah untuk handle anjing yang garang. Sebab satu, kalau kami nak bagi dia mandi, kami nak cuci tempat dia, kami susah nak masuk ke dalam sangkar mereka. So mereka tak dapat rawatannya sepatutnya lah kalau mereka sakit sebab susah nak handle dia. Kami ambil masa lah, kami akan bagi mereka makan setiap hari. Lepas tu kami coba untuk dekat mereka, masuk dalam sangkar dan bercakap dengan mereka, duduk dekat sana. Slowly mereka akan start dekat-dekat dengan kita. Masa tu kita start untuk pegang badan dia. Ya macam tu lah kalau ada anjing yang sangat garang dekat sini. Ya. Adoption perlu dilakukan supaya anjing ni mendapat tempat tinggal yang lebih bagus. Sebab kalau mereka dekat dalam shelter pun, mereka boring lah, lagi pun shelter kami ni kecil. Mereka just mandi macam seminggu sekali. Ya sebab terlalu banyak untuk kami nak handle kan. So mereka take turn lah untuk mandi, untuk dibagi perhatian macam tu.
The shelter is basically open for adoption every day, and we have about 350 to 400 animals that are available. So that's why we always say, come here and look first, because there's so many animals that are looking for a home. especially when we have a lot of the older dogs. We tell people you can come in here and pick the character you want. Some people just want a companion, so they might want a quieter dog. Some people might want a dog that's a little bit more boisterous, so then they'll come in and see, which dog you relate to.
So how do you know like each of their characters? Do you study them?
Well, when you work with them, especially in the shelter, sometimes I might not know because there's like 200-300 odd dogs, but the staff know. So then when I come in and I'll tell them, oh, Senti, I say, so-and-so is looking for a quiet dog, and then she will be the one that bring out the candidates, Being in a shelter where you're exposed to about 300 dogs and cats, there's always a likelihood for the cats to get flu or the dog might catch another contagious disease. So we keep them in foster homes. Younger animals, we prefer to use a fostering system whereby we have people that we know and they volunteer to help look after the younger animals because it's healthier. The fosterer will make sure that they get their vaccinations, and if they're with them long enough, then we have them neutered before they're put up for adoption.
The one that I've been feeding is a madam, the one that I have at the back there. So when I saw her, she was so very, very skinny. It's just skin and bones. It's very flat, the body. And the mouth, maybe she's abused because there's a hole at the side here. So when she ate kibbles, the kibbles will drop out. That's why I really pity her. That's the moment when I start to do feeding and I start to rescue whatever that I can. People were asking me, why do you want to spend so much? It's the empathy that you see them. The empathy, when you see them at the roadside, when they are being thrown into the dumpster, under the heavy rain, all soaking wet, and they are very sick, you're not going to leave that. Even though I have a lot, what comes my way, I still take in. It's the empathy, the compassion that you have towards them. When you take them in, you have to take care of them. Because if you foster and you want to put them for adoption to find a very good home, they have to look very good. Very round, chubby, sweet, and cute, you see. My intention is for them to find a good home. I want to rescue them. I don't want them to be stressed anymore. So that's why during our adoption, we're quite strict with it. We make sure that they are totally indoors, that they really are being taken care of, that they must spay or they must neuter the kittens.
Adakah kamu rasa sedih apabila ada anjing yang kamu sangat sayangi diadopt oleh public?
Sedih, at the same time happy jugalah. Sedih sebab kita sayang dia sudah lama kan, sangat close dengan kita memang, tapi at the same time happy juga sebab at least dia sudah dapat rumah baru, dah dapat orang lain yang bagi dia kasih sayang yang lebih lagi, dia pun dapat tempat yang lebih selesa, lebih luas di rumah baru dia, di tempat baru dia. Sedih juga, nangis juga lah, macam pernah juga lah, pernah terjadi, tapi kena bagi dia, kena adopt juga. So sini banyak lagi yang memerlukan kasih sayang kami juga.
The most important thing that makes me happy is that they are happy with all our animals there. So far, all my kittens, those they under my fosters, they are very okay. I mean, they have good adopters, they have good homes. So, alhamdulillah, that's it. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Do you miss giving like education talks to the kids? Like 2020 is when the school closed.
Yeah, we do miss that. We actually really enjoyed seeing the kids' reaction. Last year, we only managed to do, I think, a couple of sessions via Zoom. So it's quite different because you don't see them and you can't see their reactions, and so it's a little bit different. So we're looking forward to the time when we'll be able to go back into schools and give them talks. It used to be just myself and Rebecca. we would be the ones going to all the schools and doing all the talks and all. That's why we were looking for a good PR and education officer, because there was a lot of opportunities that we were missing. So we really needed somebody who could concentrate and pick up all these different opportunities for education, for fundraising. So that's why we're very grateful to have Marvin in our team.
I remember on my first talk back in 2016, it was given to a group of UNIMA students. And all of a sudden, there's no electricity and the microphone just gone off, everything done, there's doom. It's like, oh dear, what am I going to do? I have to shout out from my lung, and you can hear how nervous I was. I didn't knew that I don't like to talk in front of public because I practically don't actually get any hands-on on that before I was given any training to speak in public. And I'm not a good public speaker as well. I'm not good in public speaking. So it's kind of weird for me to do all these things. But I take it as a challenge, and then it's like, I start to love it eventually. Back in 2019, I think there were about like 56 schools I visited for the whole year. And looking at it, I was like, wow, that's an achievement for an introvert. I want to go back to school actually. I look forward to go back to school so that when I start to teach these kids in school and telling them how to take care of their animals, I'm sure that it could be a multiplier effect because they are going back home and teach their parents. So that's why I love going back to school.
Talking to children is much easier because children will listen. In the beginning, we used to think, oh, let's go and talk to corporations and all that, but we find that adults tend to be quite set in their mindset. It doesn't really sink in. Most kids actually love animals. So education through the children. And then we tell the children, go home and tell your families. Because nowadays, I think parents tend to listen to their children more. If a child comes home and tells them, oh, somebody came to school today and then told me that we can't keep our dog outside under the sun. The parent is not going to say, well, let's forget about it. They're going to want to set a good example to their child. You just miss the interaction with them. Listening to their questions, imparting that knowledge onto them and seeing the interest that they have. That is what helps us to continue. Now I'm happy to say that the health of the animals is much better. People can rest assured that they're taking home a healthy animal, whereas in the old days they might say, oh, I took the cat home and it died 2 weeks later. But now we don't have that happening anymore because all the animals at the shelter are fully vaccinated. And of course, all animals that leave our shelter are neutered so that we don't have the same problem of unwanted babies coming out like 6 months later, and then you'll be at our doorstep again saying, can you take these? And we'll say no. For the staff at the shelter, for Marvin, I think they're doing a great job. I want to tell them that we really appreciate the work that they do. I think it's pretty good. We all get along pretty well, I think, because we all have the same objective. Even though there might be some disagreements as to how we want to do certain things, but at the end of the day, we all have the same objective, trying to improve the welfare of the animals that are in our care, trying to improve the treatment that the animals get from the public.
As I get to know the dogs well, it's an unconditional love that give it to you. They look at you, and then without a blink of eyes, they will just telling you something. You just have to get this connection with the dogs. And for me, it's like having them around you. It's kind of like they love you for anything. Whether you're rich, you're poor, you're educated or uneducated, this doesn't matter to them. All they need is you.
Again, it's just basically the love for animals and the desire to see animal welfare become something that people think about on a daily basis or are aware of. We are all God's creatures. and we all share the same earth together. And it is our responsibility to make sure that their welfare is also looked after.